All right, so we're going to kind of jump into part two of this video series today. Um, so then the second question I wanted to talk to you guys about was, what would you like to learn more about this semester? And there was really a lot of, I think, good and interesting topics um, to talk about. Some people mentioned kind of more dealing with how to apply. And I feel like I've done a better job of making that an aspect of it on some weeks other than others. Um, and some of that's probably my comfortability with some of the chapters compared to some of the other chapters. So hopefully in the coming weeks, um, I'll be more consistent in that. So I apologize that hasn't been as consistent as it needs to be. And I know that's important. I want it to be something we are doing. And so yeah, that's definitely going to be a focus of mine over the next couple weeks. Whether that be discussions that ask you to apply or providing you with some outside resources that kind of show why that's relevant and kind of how it applies to working with adolescents. And then there were also several people who mentioned adolescence and technology in some form or another. And I know that we just did a chapter briefly on that. And I posted, if you guys saw that video, that's what I was dealing with basically, was looking at video games and kind of its effect on the brain. So I encourage you guys to watch that, especially if you're interested in that. But we can definitely try to incorporate some of that idea, like in terms of what technology and its impact on adolescence can be over the coming weeks as well. And if we have, obviously, some of this stuff we may not get to, because we do kind of have to work through the textbook and work through kind of what's there. But when applicable, I will keep this list with me and kind of pull stuff and apply and kind of pull that stuff in from outside to add more depth to what we're doing. But some people put tragic situations, mental illness, eating disorders, family and home lives, and some more, and then there was one more dealing with technology as well. And yeah, some of those, and how to kind of deal with those situations is what people is asking, especially in terms of tragic situations, abuse at home, mental illness, eating disorders. Obviously, the textbook mentions some of those things, but yeah, it doesn't really provide any resources or advice in terms of what to do or how to kind of deal with it. So hopefully, in the coming weeks, we can kind of pull from that list I said and kind of use it in our class and in our learning. So I will make sure to keep that list handy because I think there are chapters that we get into that that stuff will fit into. And also at the end of the semester, if we have some extra time too, if it didn't fit into a chapter or didn't fit into what we were talking about, then we will spend some time kind of working on that. So I appreciate those suggestions. Not only will those be helpful for now, but it'll also be helpful for maybe some ideas in the future to kind of build on and expand on what the textbook is saying. So I appreciate all of the feedback and responses to all of the bonus questions. Like I said, it's all useful. It's all helpful. So I appreciate that. So the last part of this video, I want to kind of talk about what you guys have coming up this next couple weeks. So obviously, you guys, Friday, you have your rough draft of your paper due. And so on that, there is a rubric on here under content, and I'll show you guys that in a minute for the paper. But my goal on the rough draft is to get those back to you guys by the end of this next week, by the end of week 11, basically. That way, you guys have 2 weeks until your final paper's due. And so the sooner, obviously, I get you that feedback on those, the more time you guys have to utilize it, the more time you have to make corrections. And I think that's fair to you guys. To do to you. So I'm going to get those rough drafts back to you as quickly as possible. And then that'll give you plenty of time to use that and work on your final paper. So in terms of your rough draft, I've had several people ask me questions, both in the online class and the face-to-face class, in terms of like what does that consist of? Do I need to have the 5 minimum pages? Do I need to have this? So in terms of that, yes and no is kind of the answer. My response is the more complete your rough draft is, the better feedback you will get, or the more complete feedback you will get, because there's more for me to go off of. I'm not making assumptions. So obviously the more complete it is, the better, but it is a rough draft. And so the things that I will focus on most, I want to look at your references. I want to make sure you're citing those correctly. So basically the format, your APA format needs to be good still in the rough draft. I'm going to make sure you're using your references. So on this paper, you have to at least use 5 outside sources, peer-reviewed sources. So make sure you're doing that in the rough draft. I am also going to pay attention to the content, what you're saying, what you're trying to say. And those are going to be kind of the 2 main things that I am paying attention to. In terms of grammar, punctuation, spelling, not as much on the rough draft as I will on the final. On the rough draft, like I said, I'm going to pay a lot of attention to your format. I want to make sure you guys are getting that. So the more complete APA format you have on the rough draft, the more feedback I can kind of give you on some corrections or resources to use. And then on your content. So those are really going to be the 2 biggest things I look at on your rough draft. But like I said, the more complete it is, the more feedback, the more complete feedback that you can receive on that. In terms of the rough draft and your final, there are 2 resources to use if you're concerned about formatting. You can use the Purdue OWL, which has an APA guide. So you can pretty much look up if you have a question about anything in-text citations, if you're curious about a reference page and what that should look like, any of those kind of questions, use that. It's a great resource. And then there's also Citation Machine. So again, you had the Purdue OWL for APA formatting guide and kind of a little bit of everything. In terms of just citations, you can use Citation Machine. And you enter your information from your article that it asks for, and it spits you out a nice citation that's mostly accurate. Now, you do need to make sure sometimes that it's completely accurate. It's not perfect, but it does a pretty good job in doing that. So those are 2 resources to use. I encourage you to use them on your rough draft and your final paper. So then in terms of a rubric, I want to show you guys that, because I think it's not necessarily, you don't have to meet all this criteria on the rough draft. But it can kind of help guide you and answer any questions you may have on that. And it's under research paper materials. And I did notice an error on this earlier so just ignore the point values that are there, because it's not been updated, because the total paper is, I think, 150 points. And so those point totals do not add up correctly. So kind of ignore the points that are put on here, but look at what it states in each box in relation to excellent, very competent, fairly competent, approaching competence. So read what's in those boxes. That's more important than necessarily the point value, because then you're basing it off what grade you want to get. So look at what's in those boxes. And so, like I said, on the rough draft, these first really 4 sections are going to be very important, even 5. So, I mean, I'm not going to, like I said, on the rough draft, I'm not going to pay a ton of attention to style and mechanics. I'm going to pay attention to the content. Is it relevant to your paper topic? I'm going to pay a lot of attention to your supporting evidence, your literature support, and your ability to use what we've discussed in the textbook. So being able to integrate that information in with your supporting evidence and your literature support, and kind of how that's relevant to your topic. So those are the things I would say are most important on the rough draft. But if you guys have any questions on the rough draft, it's not due till Friday, so there's still time to ask questions. There's still time to ask for clarification on anything. I tried to be as clear as possible in things that I write and the things that I say. But unless you guys say something, it's hard for me to know how clear or unclear something is because I cannot see your faces as you read it, and I can't see your faces as you listen. And so it's really important if something's not clear, ask me. There's no dumb questions. I can only give you a dumb response. So ask any question, even if you think it's a simple question or it's a question you think you should know. Just ask the question. It's better to ask for clarification now than forgiveness later. So please do that. And good luck on your rough draft. Good luck on your quiz. Good luck on the discussion. My email is in the syllabus. If not, it is. So feel free to email me with any questions or concerns you may have. And if not, I will talk to you guys later in the week.